day has been a product of a lot of hard work and weeks of personal engagement. From the moment Hamas kidnapped these people, I, along with my team, have worked around the clock to secure their release. Today's release are the start of a process. We expect more hostages to be released tomorrow, and more the day after, and more the day after that.
We return with a Fox News alert. That's President Biden touting America's involvement in the release of 13 Israeli hostages from Hamas captivity. Yet still no Americans have been released this go-around, but we are expecting more hostages to be released today. Here with her take, former State Department spokesperson Morgan Ortagus. Good morning, Morgan. Thanks for joining us. Give us your perspective of this. There are a lot of takes in several directions. Is this good? Is it bad? What's next?
Well, Joey, I mean, listen, as you watch the videos online and you see the families reunited, not only the children, I was just watching a video of 85-year-old Yafa Adar. She actually survived the Holocaust. She survived the Holocaust to see the state of Israel formed, only towards the end of her life to be kidnapped by Hamas terrorists and used effectively as a human shield in Gaza. And you see her being reunited after family. You think what this woman has been through. And of course, the images that we're seeing of the children being reunited, especially the little children and their mother. I believe there's two sets of mothers and children that have been reunited. And so your heart is filled with joy for those people. But of course, we as Americans remember that we still have Americans left behind. And the president did not have a good answer yesterday for when we're going to get them out. And that needs to be the first and top priority for the president of the United States. And he's certainly going to owe the American people answers if we don't have them out soon. But listen, we're doing it. This is being a part of the State Department, being with Mike Pompeo, being with Brian Hook and Robert O'Brien. As we negotiated for hostages around the world, I can tell you that this is one of the toughest things that you do. Unfortunately, this is one of the reasons I have been so critical of the Biden administration and their past hostage negotiations. Remember, on the anniversary of 9/11, Joey, just a few weeks before October 7th, the Biden administration gave $6 billion to Iran for U.S. hostages. And I was critical back then because I said every time you set a bounty that high, you make it harder and harder to get Americans out around the world. Yeah. I unfortunately didn't realize how quickly I would be right about that.
There are a lot of layers to this that I'd love to get into, but as someone that was at the State Department understands this type of diplomacy, what we saw yesterday, it didn't surprise many of my colleagues that are in D.C., but it surprised me a little bit seeing these citizens from Thailand being released kind of as almost a separate deal. And I guess my question is, it seems like the U.S. is very much going to a negotiation table with Egypt, Qatar, Israel, Hamas, but there are all these other countries that maybe are contacting Hamas directly. Will there come a point if American hostages aren't released that the U.S. might go to Hamas directly, or are they already?
Well, essentially what's happening right now in Qatar is you're having the United States, Israel, Qatar, others. Egypt is involved in the negotiations as well. And so, no, we're not talking to Hamas directly, but we are talking to them through the Qataris and through the Egyptians. You'll remember that during the Taliban negotiations in 2019 and 2020, we were also using the Qataris in Doha. So we have done this before in Qatar. This is not a new role. Yeah. However, the administration, if we don't get more Americans out today, we should know within hours who the next list of 10 to 13 are that are getting out. If there aren't Americans if there are not Americans on that list, this administration is going to have to use leverage. They're going to have to be very direct with all of our negotiators, but especially with Hamas. This is also one of the reasons, and none of this stuff happens in a vacuum, Joey. This is why 3 years of trying to appease Iran doesn't help the situation today, doesn't help get Americans home. Bad policy for 3 years on Iran directly affects what's happening today in Doha.
Real quick on this, on the specific of getting Americans out, is there more pressure on the Biden administration to get Americans out, or is there more pressure coming from the Biden administration to Israel to get Americans out?
Well, listen, they're Americans, so they're our responsibility ultimately. And we have been, I think thankfully, except for the extreme fringes, there's been a bipartisan consensus that have been supportive of the state of Israel. That needs to continue. I very much worry, of course, what we're seeing on the extreme left. But ultimately, the responsibility of any president of the United States is to get Americans home. And remember, during COVID, Joey, I was a part of the team that had to get 100,000 Americans home. We had to repatriate them from around the world. So this is tough. These are tough issues, but they can be done with a strong president and a strong Secretary of State.
Morgan Ortagus, thank you so much for bringing your expertise. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Joey. Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.